people, being assertive is easier said than done, and it often leads to not being in control of certain situations in life. This can also impact self-confidence as well. So we've invited holistic self-development coach Simone Naidu into studio, and she'll be sharing some of the ways to improve assertiveness and self-confidence. Welcome, Simone. Nice to have you. New face, new energy. Wonderful to have you here.
Namaste, Michael. Great to be here.
Great. Well, now, Simone, let's talk about assertiveness. I mean, people aren't always sure of what assertiveness is. So maybe let's break that down so people can understand.
Okay. So without getting too technical, I would describe assertiveness as the direct communication of your thoughts and feelings, particularly when it comes to things like boundaries or your needs and desires.
Okay. So now, what would be the indicators that you are assertive? How do people identify as being assertive?
Okay. So assertiveness is usually displayed by someone who has quite a calm demeanor, however is able to also be direct.
Okay.
So oftentimes we confuse assertiveness, for example, with aggressive behavior, pushy behavior, dominant behavior, but that's not really what it is. And that's why I like this term being lovingly assertive.
Okay.
It's this concept of I can respect you and let you know, Michael, this is my boundary. No, I'm not okay with this. I'd prefer this. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say it's a non-aggressive form of communication? Because from what I'm understanding is that if you're assertive, you can get your point across without being manic, without shouting, without forcing. You're stating your case and you're moving on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So this is often because we've seen very bad examples of assertiveness. First time being in our home, our moms or dads or whoever our caregivers were growing up. And so because of that, we start to model a particular behavior, and then we watch TV and we see other adults around us, and we get this misconception of what it means to speak my truth, to ask for what I need. If I feel as though a boundary is being crossed, how do I let someone know without attacking them?
Yes.
So this is a great indicator of assertiveness, is that it is in no means attacking.
Okay.
It is very clear, it's very truthful, it's very honest. But you are not doing it because you're trying to take away someone's power, dominate them, judge them, criticize them. You're literally saying, this is me, this is what I need,
Right.
and I need to let you know.
So now, where self-confidence and assertiveness, how do they balance or interact with each other? Because I can imagine someone who's not confident is generally not assertive. Is that true? Is it a correct assessment?
So I don't generally like to use self-confidence as a term.
Okay.
Even with myself or my clients, because anyone can pretend to be confident.
Right.
Right? So those are usually the people we see. They walk into a room, they're super loud, they're super direct, and the other shy people look at them and be like, ooh, I'm not that thing.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's a mask for insecurity, and it's a coping mechanism.
Okay.
So someone can be confident in any environment, and usually it's quite inauthentic. But there's a difference between someone that has self-esteem. And I love that word self-esteem, because that more accurately describes how assertiveness will come. When someone has self-esteem, which means they believe in their inherent worth, they almost walk with a sense of gravitas in their being. They are who they are. They are not trying to be anything else. So you get this authentic feeling from them when you interact with them. They are looking to connect with you in a very real way, not pretentious. They're not trying to show or prove anything.
Yes.
And so it becomes a lot easier that when we have good self-esteem, which is a good sense of self-worth, right, the value I see in myself, it's very easy to know what my boundaries are, because I don't have boundaries everywhere. Clearly articulate what the boundary is.
Okay.
Okay.
So now, there I'm hearing someone who's a people pleaser is generally not going to be so assertive. So where do we encourage ourselves to develop that self-esteem and therefore the assertiveness? How do we, or do we need to sort of have a bit of assistance there from somebody possibly?
So people pleasing, Michael, is one of the indicators that you are not being assertive. Okay, so people who have either very fluid boundaries or no boundaries at all, we call them, you're like a carpet. Anyone can kind of walk over you, right? Someone who feels very scared to object to something because it's not the status quo. So oftentimes this tends to plague women more so than men because of conditioning.
Right.
And then people of color as well. Again, cultural conditioning. So this concept of not being able to speak up, that it's actually disrespectful. You know, for women, it's almost like, oh, I can't speak up against my dad because he's the patriarchy of the family. So what tends to happen then is people tend to become people pleasers. Okay, it affects women more than men, but there are some men that do it. And basically, when people start to do that, what they're actually telling you is what they believe about themselves.
Okay.
I don't believe I'm worthy of being heard. I don't believe that what I feel and think matters. I'm not important, so they tend to make themselves irrelevant. So they people please, or they bite their mouth, or they hold back their tongue. You know, you might have heard that from your mom, just be quiet.
Yes, yeah, I think
Just
we've all heard that at some point.
don't say anything right now. And yet, this is what I believe, that as children, we're actually born with inherent self-esteem. So you mentioned, like, how do I actually build that? You actually need to unlearn a lot of bad habits or behaviors. Children are born with natural self-esteem. They know they are worthy, they are worth loving, they are lovable, they feel safe to express themselves. I've never seen a child with low self-esteem. And I challenge anyone to actually come bring me a child, be like, this child has low self-esteem.
Yeah.
No. Because children inherently know that they are beings of value and worth, and then their conditioning changes that. So if right now you are struggling to say no, to set a boundary, to let people know, listen, I'm just actually not comfortable with that, that's when you've got to realize that you had it to begin with, and you've probably got some woundings that are layering over your psychology, that it's making it, you are actually afraid to say no.
Okay.
And talking about those fears, they're actually very interesting because they're all made up in the mind. They're not actually realized.
So let's flip it on the other side. I mean, people who are, I want to say arrogant, because I think a lot of people also read assertiveness as arrogance sometimes. Is there a two-way street here in terms of how I present my assertiveness and how you read my assertiveness?
There is. I think the main thing is around understanding that we will all assert ourselves in different ways. So the way you're going to assert yourself as a being is going to look different to mine. Okay. And that could even just be in the tone of my voice, how loud or soft I speak, the type of vocabulary I use. I have highly introverted clients who are able to, in the most subtle ways, assert themselves, whereas I have extreme extroverted clients who assert themselves. Both are loving, but they look slightly different.
Okay.
Arrogance, I feel, it's actually an emotional state, okay? And it stems from high insecurity, and it's a coping mechanism.
Okay.
So we actually learn that the best form of almost gaining control of a situation is I'm going to assert myself dominantly and aggressively.
So no longer loving now.
Right. Absolutely, because it's fear-based. Arrogance is fear-based,
okay.
Whereas assertiveness in its pure form is actually love-based. You know, I love myself enough that I respect myself, and therefore I respect you. So you're not a mind reader. How will you know that, Michael, I don't think that it's appropriate that you touch me on my thigh when you're sitting next to me? Unless I tell you, listen, that actually makes me uncomfortable. I'm not sure if you're aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. And that often happens in the workplace, right? So something could be misconstrued as sexual harassment when actually you didn't say, that doesn't make me comfortable.
Yes.
So because we're all coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, but there is a keen difference between the ability to be aggressively assertive, and we feel that in energy. You can actually feel it in your body. You're like, this feels actually quite toxic. There's anger behind this person. Versus someone else, and this will take you time, because, for example, women are often misunderstood in their assertiveness. Okay? So they're labeled very bad things when they start to say, no, I don't agree with you. Whereas the same thing in a man is considered, oh, he's confident, he knows what he wants. That's leadership. So we almost have to start training ourselves to hear what our no's are, what our boundaries are, and how to assert that.
So what might be the sort of primary steps in gaining the ability to develop that self-esteem and assertiveness if I'm somebody who is not?
Right. So you've got to understand firstly that underneath every behavior pattern is a way you think and a way you feel. So we call that mental patterns and emotional patterns. Now, when we have blockages or woundings, in the mental space, we call those limiting belief systems. So And in the emotional space, we call those emotional barriers, right? So again, this is the power of working with a professional, because they take you into the structure of how your psyche is actually developed, which is quite powerful, right? So underneath someone who has low self-esteem, there's a particular way that person thinks and a particular way they feel or their emotions process. So people who have low self-esteem have these core limiting beliefs, and you can identify them. Do a checklist for yourself right now, right? I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't matter, I'm not deserving. When that, and the last one, it's not safe for me. When those things are there, we're going to struggle with self-esteem. It's going to be very hard for us to actually speak our truth, to say this is what I think, because a whole bunch of fears. And now here's the emotional state. People who have low self-esteem have a lot of self-doubt. They're highly critical and judgmental of themselves, and they're walking around being like, oh my God, I don't want to upset anyone. I don't want conflict. Please, no conflict. When those are together, you know that there's some healing work that needs to be done on the way you actually see yourself.
Okay. So it's a process and it's a journey. Once again, I think these things are, it's a journey to get to that state, and it's a journey to get back from that state. So thank you for this discussion. I think it's been very interesting, because it's fascinating how you can see these things in people and you can start to recognize once you've got a clearer idea of them. So thank you so much for your insights.
Pleasure.